Hey, what's up everybody? I'm Tim here with Lowbrow Customs, and today I'd like to talk about Lowbrow Customs' new narrow triple trees. This is the new style narrow tree that we have available. It's 1 inch narrower than stock. It's designed around 39mm forks, machined out of aluminum 6061 right here in the United States. The offset for your handlebars is your standard 3.5. So T-bars or risers will both be able to fit. They bolt on with Allen bolts that bolt in from the bottom and are flush mounted, so will be pretty hidden after you fit your handlebars to the trees. It doesn't come with handlebar bolts because certain handlebars come with different thread pitches, whether it's fine or coarse, so you'll have to match those with what you're using. The bottom tree has a headlight mount, which will be able to fit a variety of different style headlights. So you'll be able to bolt the mount on with actually an Allen bolt, or a washer with a nut will fit inside this bore. So you'll have a wide range of headlights that you'll be able to fit to this tree. Around the bottom of the stem, you'll see a couple of holes. This fits an integrated hidden fork stop that won't be seen once you bolt the trees to your bike. But there'll be a couple different styles for you to choose from to match your bike. There's like ribs and smooth, and you'll see on the website that there's a few different choices for you that'll bolt right to this tree. So over here, you'll see 6 3/8 course bolts. There's 2 that will be, the 2 longer ones will be for the pinches on the stem, and the 4 will be for the pinches for your tubes. So this kit also includes a new machine stem that comes with a clip and a really nice custom bolt to finish off the top of your tree. So since the trees are 1 inch narrower than stock, we also supply you with an axle to match. It's also 1 inch narrower, stock style, and it's designed to fit with using your stock lower legs. But since everything is narrower, you also have to watch what size spool that you get for this setup. If you're gonna run the stock lowers with the narrow triple trees, you're going to have to purchase a spool wheel that has a maximum OD of 3 3/4. Anything smaller than that will work fine. 3 3/4 is gonna be pushing it for the space in between your lower legs. I think that gives you only about 1/8 per side, which isn't much. So try to get something a little smaller than that. So I'm gonna show you how to install this on this stock style Evo Sportster frame that's behind me. And just before we get to that, I'm gonna show you how to set this up to get it ready. So these trees are set up to be used with internal fork stops. So I picked this kit from Pro One because we're going to actually be installing this on this stock Evo Sportster frame, which it doesn't have neck cups, it has the Timken races pressed into the neck. It's 88 to 99 Softail internal fork stop kit with the fork stop built onto the race. And so I'm gonna install that onto the bottom tree, and then we're gonna press in the stem. Later, I'm gonna show you how to use the rest of this kit, but first I have to install this piece onto the bottom tree for the fork stop to be able to slip into. There's a couple slots in this. One is a little wider than the other, and since we're gonna be building a chopper eventually, we're gonna want a little bit more turning radius. We have high bars. We're not really worried about our fork stops hitting anything like our gas tank hitting the bars or anything like that. So we're gonna go with the wider one and put that into the spot that the tang on the Timken is actually gonna hit. So since I'm gonna be installing the Timken race with the fork stop towards the rear of the bike, I'm going to install this with the large portion of the slot on the plate to the backside of the triple tree. So you just set that on there. It comes with hardware, and I would suggest using blue Loctite when you install this into the tree. The triple tree has a split for the pinch bolts in the rear, so only 3 of these bolts are actually going to be used. I'm just gonna leave these loose in case there's a little wiggle room, so when I install the stem and tighten it down, then I'll come back and actually snug these up. So now we're gonna install the stem, and I don't have any hardware in there. So sometimes this stem was going to fit tight into the bore and you might have some struggle. You won't have to beat this in or press it in or anything like that. If it isn't a nice slip fit, there's a trick that you can use where you'll actually take the bolt and carefully thread it in backwards, lined up with the threads of the bolt, and carefully just thread that in here. And once you get this pretty close, you're gonna take a washer and just block off that hole so it's actually pressing these two apart. And you won't need much force. Just a little bit, and it'll spread that out just a couple thou, just enough to give you a little bit of clearance for this to just pass through super easy. Orient the clip to, I don't know, front or back or whatever, just so it's not like crooked. And then we'll take this out. And before we tighten this up, we're going to make sure that that's flush on there, all the way touching the face of the bottom of the tree. We'll add a little bit of Loctite. And then with the stem tight, you'll snug up these. So that's it for now on the bench, and now we're going to move to the bike and start installing this onto the motorcycle. Okay, so now we're fitting the bottom tree up, and I just wanted to show you, so this is just kind of loose in its place, and it's really close to your previous neck lock, where you would like put a padlock through this. And since this has no provisions for that, we're not going to use it anymore. We're going to get rid of that. So we're going to cut it off, and I'm going to just kind of rough cut it. And I would suggest cutting this off and then smoothing it out nice for when you're going to build your bike later. While you're here with the grinder, you might want to just hack off this previous fork stop that's welded on the front of the neck, as it's going to be in the way of the headlight mount on the triple trees. I'm going to leave it on for now just for you to be able to visualize and see how close it is, and it'll keep you from being able to bolt a headlight mount onto it. I just rough cut this for now. You're probably going to want to smooth this out a little better than I have, but we're just in the mock-up stage, and so I just want to get past and continue on showing you how these triple trees mount. So I already tapped out the previous fork race, and this is how you can see that they're different. One doesn't have the fork stop. The other one has a provision for the fork stop. Since this is kind of sucking up into the neck, we want to make sure that we have enough room for this Timken race to be able to press all the way in there, and the stop portion doesn't hit anything else on the neck, say to cock this in the bore or to get stuck or just to not seat all the way. So we're going to measure and make sure that we're going to be able to get the depth that we need. So I take my calipers out, and I'm going to just measure where that positive stop, where the Timken would hit in the bore, and I'm going to go to the outside face of the neck. Okay, so we're at about 5.65. On this race, where the fork stop protrudes outward from the cylinder surface, it has a little radius on it. So I want to make sure that I'm also going to have enough room for that radius. So I'm going to use my calipers again and measure how far that it is straight. Keep in mind also that this, on the fork stop, this board does actually get larger. So it starts at a little under 2, about 198, 1975. And then it extends to about 2, almost 2 1/8. And so this actually comes out almost 1/8. So you have a little bit of room for it, but you're just gonna have to grind out a little portion to be able to clear this fork stop. This was 5.65, yeah, 5.65. 5.65, and this is about 5.35. And then so we really only need an area that's about as wide as the stop, because the stop is going to extend past into this plate that has the slots too, except this like little tang on it. So we only need to grind out a little bit of spot, just just clearance for this thing so it has enough room so that it can seat properly into the neck. We're only talking 30 thousandths, it's not much. So we're just going to sand away a little bit in the back or the front, whichever you have chosen to wear the slot in the bottom of the tree. So if you're gonna mount it forwards or backwards, and I chose to mount it in the back, so we're gonna grind a little bit away in the back to be able to have a relief for this. And so I'm gonna grind away, I'm gonna measure it and make sure that I have enough clearance for this to seat before I start to press it in, because then you're gonna have to beat it out again if you don't do this properly. So I'm gonna get my sander out and we're gonna grind this away. I'm just gonna kind of give me an eyeball idea of how far I wanna go. Just try to make it even. But like I said, we're grinding almost like 30 thousandths, so it's really not much. We're just gonna be sanding that down and maybe take a couple measurements just to go past what we think is gonna be needed, just to give it a little bit extra clearance. You only wanna do this one time. And we're also mounting it in the back, so it's also, you're not gonna see this once the bike's together. So I ground a relief into the bottom portion of the neck, and I just want to measure to double check that I have enough room to press in this Timken race. So I got to measure across the entire removed section to make sure that I'm going to have enough space. And I'm a little bit under a half inch, I think that's pretty good. That'll give me just a little bit of space after it's pressed in that it should never touch. So we're gonna be using the Fast Eddy tool to press this in. There's one issue though. This Fast Eddy tool comes with attachments that will sit down inside the Timken race at the same angle. And to seat them properly, center everything, so when you press this together, the one problem we have is this Timken race has the fork stop built into it, and the Fast Eddy tool doesn't have a relief on it to be able to allow this to seat in all the way. You could grind your tool if you wanted to, but I would suggest not doing so. We're gonna use the top portion as it is, but for the bottom on this race, you can actually just purchase one of the washers on the website at Lowbrow Customs just to allow, it has just a notch in it to allow for a relief for the fork stop. You can purchase this one. It's also pretty simple. You don't have to use the Fast Eddy tool. You'll be able to use, say, like washers and nuts on some threaded rod to be able to press this in, but the same issue applies. You'll have to have some type of relief for the fork stop, and you want to engage basically on the entire, as much of the outside diameter of the race to ensure that it pulls in straight parallel to the neck when you're pressing this in. So you'll be able to find this on the website. So just keep that in mind when you're pressing this in. The other thing that you're going to have to contend with is pressing this in straight. The one thing that might help you is there's a weld seam right on the inside of the neck, just under where we're going to be locating the fork stop. So to center that weld seam on the tang for the fork stop. And so we're gonna try to get everything close, and then I'm gonna press it in a little bit so it holds, and then check so that I can see that it's going in straight. And if I need to maybe adjust it, I might tap it back out and then start again, just so I can get this as straight as possible. And start slipping this into place. And so from the front, the tang is basically the width of that, the shaft on the tool. So it should be that if you can't see the tang, you're pretty dang straight. This is a little hard to line up, and since we're putting the tang in the back, it's hard to see. But then again, I put it in the back because I wanted to hide a little bit of that grinding and stuff. So to try to line this up, since everything like this is going to be in the way for me to visually see that it's in the center, I'm going to be using my combination square to put a line directly across from the center of the tang. And this is also going to be a little bit of eyeballing. So this attachment for your square puts the mark in the center of a circle, which is why it's handy. Got that centered in here. And then on the back side, I drew a mark and then I just transferred into the front because you're not going to be able to see that top face. So now we'll be able to visually inspect this from the front. And then we're going to go off of the old fork stop, and I'm going to scribe a line just on the front of that and be able to try to line those two up. And then once it stays, I'm going to take this out, visually inspect that it's still in the center nice, and then continue to press it in. So we're going to put a little scribe line just for reference on the face, like the existing fork stop, because we assume that's going to be centered. We're going to double check to verify because it might not be. But we assume that's center, which it's 1 1/8 wide. So that's half of that is 9/16, 5/625. And then just going to put a tiny scribe line. And please don't jump on me for using my calipers for that. There we go. It's just powder coat. We got a mark in the center, and we're going to use that just to line up our race in front. And look at that. I think that'll get us close enough. So I'm just trying to line these marks up the best I can. And just lightly get this to stay. This is looking pretty good. It's really close. And like I said, we're just gonna kind of get this press started, and then so it stays, and then I'm gonna take it off so I can actually see the tang in the back and be able to verify that it looks very centered from just visually inspecting it. It'll be really hard to tell until you actually get the bars on to see where they hit the stop left and right to make sure it's centered. But do your best to try to make sure that you get that tang as centered as possible in that rotation. But so taking your time at this would be your best bet. And then after, okay, we got it in a ways. And I think that looks pretty good. It's pretty lined up with that weld that's going down the middle. We're also assuming that that's perfectly centered, but visually from left to right, it looks like the height of this, as far as like rotating towards me, isn't closer on one side. You could kind of, if you look at it, if one's closer, this is going to be further away. So that's another way to tell instead of just measuring left to right. But try your best just to get that as centered as possible. But from doing how we did it, I think it looks pretty good, and I'm going to continue pressing that the rest of the way in. Okay, that looks good. We got a little bit of clearance, which is good. That's what we were going for. You can see the tang is just sitting a little past that surface, just the tiniest bit. Let's see how it looks. We've got our 2 Timken bearings. We're going to install one at the top. We're just mocking it up, so we're not going to have these greased at the moment. So we're going to fit this up. I've got, I'm going to install the bearing on the bottom of this, and I need to put my shim on to space the fork plate away from the bottom surface of this neck. So I got that, and that's just going to go right before the bearing. Slip the bearing on, and with our official Harley tool, we're going to slip this in the bottom, make sure that you get the, don't let the bearing fall out, and then we're also making sure that the tang from the fork stop is going to slip into the plate that's bolted to the tree. Put your dust shield on the top. We're going to fit our tree into place and kind of leave that a little loose, and then thread on our stem bolt. And then before we get this too super tight, we're gonna get one of our fork tubes in place. When you're installing these, be careful just to try to stay straight with the bore of the trees and don't twist when it's going in. You don't want to scratch up your tubes and get a bunch of zigzags on them. We're just going to tighten up the top for now, because then we're going to actually draw the trees together. And you want to leave, I like to leave the bottoms loose, but you want to leave one of these, the same on both sides, one of them loose so they're able to be drawn together as you tighten up the stem. Okay. And now that you actually have the forks on, you could see if you got this pretty straight. I'm going to tighten this back up. You want to snug that up. You don't want any play. It's okay to have a little bit of load on there. I snugged this up, and as you can see, it's quite a bit tighter. It doesn't really flop like it did. It stays straight in the front. And like I said, when you put a wheel on here and stuff, it'll still be loose and you'll be able to turn this easily, but it'll be just a little stiff, and that's how I like to set them up. After you get it adjusted the way you want, you're gonna lock down all the pinch bolts. The Harley manual recommends 30 to 35 foot-pounds. These are custom trees, and we recommend that you torque them to 30 foot-pounds. So get out your torque wrench and all the pinch bolts on the tubes and on the stem, torque them all down to 30 foot-pounds. I did also want to show you that we left the original fork step on, and it is going to be in the way when you bolt on a headlight. I don't think it really matters what headlight you use. It looks like it's going to be in the way, so keep that in mind. You're going to have to cut that off. It's a useless thing anymore. We did use it to line everything up, which it was handy for that, but now it's just in the way, so make sure that you cut that off the next time you have your front end off. So here's the axle that comes with this kit that's used for this specific version, the narrow trees with your stock lowers. And it works just as your previous axle, except it's 1 inch shorter to accommodate for the narrow trees. And it fits in just the same way. This axle only bolts in one way. There's one hole that's larger on one leg, and then a smaller hole for the threaded portion of the axle on the other leg. Like we said before, this is only going to fit with a 3 3/4 spool or narrower, but everything else will work exactly as stock. When you bolt this on, tighten up the axle on one side first to draw everything to one leg, and then you're going to lock down your pinch bolts when you're installing your wheel. So I showed you how to mount this on a stock Sportster Evo frame, and we're gonna move this aside and switch out bikes, and I wanted to pull up, I got a Gasbox full frame chopper that we're going to put up here and bolt this whole assembly on there with a wheel and everything so you can visualize how this looks on a full frame chopper. So as you can see, we swapped out that frame that we had up here to a Gasbox full frame chopper. We've got the front end off. Clearly we've jumped ahead, and I've got the trees bolted on to the neck. It bolts on exactly the same, so I didn't want to bore you with some of the monotonous of doing it twice. This one's actually a lot easier because we don't have any of those issues to deal with. So we actually went and showed you the difficult version with the tang and the special tools, but this will bolt on with the regular fast eddy tool without any modifications, and just like you've seen before, how people have bolted on neck cups. So just to circle back to things that I mentioned before, you can see the headlights on here, and we got this basically tucked back as far as it could to the neck tube. Everything's like really close and just super tidy, and just kind of trying to clean things up with some of the hardware not being visible, like the headlight mount on the bottom of the tree is sunken in there quite a bit. The same going for the hardware for the handlebars. Our counterboard there pretty deep to where the head is nearly flush, and just try to give you a nice clean look. So the next step, we're gonna get the tubes and the lowers on here. Before we do so, you kind of want to have to choose, there's a couple ways to finish the top of the fork legs. And so you can either go with the Lowbrow Customs premium dust shield cover, or we have a fork brace. So it's one or the other. Before you slip these into place, you're going to have to fit these on top of the fork legs. We're not going to be using this particular fork leg, but I do want to just show how easy these are to install. So it's just like stock, slips into place. And if you've ever used some of the aftermarket ones, you'll know that trying to beat these things on and they don't quite fit right, and you're tapping them, and the next thing you know, you've dented the top. You don't need any special tube to tap one of these things on. You can get just a piece of PVC from your local hardware store. This is 1.5 inch, schedule 40. Yeah, schedule 40. And this works perfect to slip over the top of the tube, and you'll just get this kind of square, and then and just tap that thing into place, and it'll lock on there, and it's tight. You'll have to actually tap it off. But like I said before, if you've ever used any of the aftermarket versions that are available, you know what kind of a pain in the butt those are to try to install, and try to install nicely. So just wanted to show that thing off. But we're gonna actually run the fork brace on this application to also show you how it works. So this is the Lowbrow Customs narrow fork brace, which has the exact same offset center to center as our narrow triple trees. It is designed to be able to work with stock lower legs and the Lowbrow Customs tapered lowers. We also have a wider version that will work with stock 39mm trees, and then also be able to work with the stock 39 lower legs or the Lowbrow Customs tapered lowers. Putting this on, it's pretty simple. It's just going to engage in exactly the same spot as the dust shield will tap on, but this doesn't tap exactly. It's going to clamp with 2 bolts on the back side of it. So I like to put the bolts in the back so it's not visible. So just keep that in mind when slipping them over your tubes, and which side of the leg or which fork that you actually install them on. So we're gonna be putting this is going to be the right side fork. We've got the brace on with the bolts pointed towards the rear of the bike. We're gonna slip this in and try to keep it parallel to the bore, just going straight in, and remember not to twist as you're pushing this into place. And I like to make the bottom of the cap flush with the top of the tree. Same thing. Grab this, get the fork brace kind of slipped into place. Straight and easy. Here we go. Okay. Just snugging these up for right now. The Harley manual recommends 30 to 35 foot-pounds on the stock trees. These are custom trees, and we suggest a torque spec of 30 foot-pounds on all the pinch bolts. Now I'm gonna snap the fork brace on the top of the legs. And so you just wanna, they should kind of just push down into place, and it's not a bad idea to get a mallet and just kind of give it a couple taps just so it's all the way down and it's engaged on that lip on the top of the fork legs. And yeah, it fits pretty tight. So we'll get the wheel in place. A little grease always helps. I think I need to lower this here. There we go. When you're tightening up your axle, you want to draw everything to the left leg. Tighten up the nut first, and then after that's torqued down, you'll torque down the pinch bolt, which will draw everything, keep the front end parallel so it won't ever pinch it to lock up your tubes as you're riding down the road. We left the fork plates loose. We didn't want to clamp this together until the lowers were lined up with the axle and the wheel in place and torqued down tight. So we got that still loose. We just need, this is the last part of the puzzle that we need to tighten up. You want to just tap that down again to make sure that it's engaging properly, it hits the stops. You'll be able to feel when that thing taps on fully. Also, be careful and pay attention and make sure that you tap this on straight. You don't want to cock it one way or the other, but it goes on pretty easily, so you should be able to feel it when it's fully engaged on the top of the lowers. So we're tapping this down just to make sure that it's engaged all the way, and we're going to snug this up. And just like before, I recommend 30 foot-pounds and to use blue Loctite. So, so that's it. Like I said, pretty easy. And before you go for a ride, just go over them. It's good to double check to make sure that everything's torqued properly. And if you're looking for anything alike, our new triple trees, fork brace, premium dust shields, you can find a bunch of parts like this and more at lowbrowcustoms.com. Thanks for watching.